Here we go. Welcome.
Microphone here. Okay.
Yep, there we go.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yep. We're excited about doing this. We have had a lot of people reach out to us and say that they want something a little more in depth with school board members, that they're hearing the same kind of 2-minute limited answers. So we're giving you 20 minutes. That's your only time limit. I got to pull my timer up to be once I ask the first question. There'll be a 20-minute time limit on your answers total. There are 7 questions to guide the conversation, but you can answer 1 or 3 or 7, whatever you want. We want you to use this time to tell people what they need to know about you as a candidate. So are there any questions on the format?
Yes.
Okay. What are the questions?
Oh, no, I understand the format. I'm good.
Fantastic. So let's go to the first question, which is, tell me what you love about public schools.
Well, America was really the first country to do this in a very broad way. And there's nothing that improves socialization and opportunity like public schools. And we've been doing this for hundreds of years. The change now is that a high school education really is not enough to earn a middle class living. And so we have been slow, I think, to engage, candidly, a majority of students in a path that is beyond high school. And so one of the things that we have to change is to provide students with a plan as to how do they get sufficient education to earn a middle class living with all the technology changes that have happened.
Okay, next question is, what are the attributes of an effective school board member? Which attributes are your strengths and which do you struggle with?
Well, I think having served in public office for 10 years in the city council, in many respects, it's really both a problem solving skill set and looking for opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities. I mean, of course, we have the COVID-19 crisis, which is obviously the crisis right in front of us, and we're going to have to address, can we safely educate students, and that's really going to be, to me, the measure. And if you can safely educate students, that means you can also make sure that the teachers and staff are safe. The longer term is really addressing at the front end of the educational system. Can we close the gap for the students that are falling behind? And so I have learned problem solving skills over the years. You try to put ideology to the side and just be rational and try to break apart problems and begin addressing them. And usually it's a whole series of things. One of the things that I learned in business is, I've been the boss for 35 years, and now there's 50 people at work, so only the problems come to your desk. And so there's a skill set that I think I have that I use both in business and on the city council, that I think will have more of a need for it in this environment at schools than in my recent memory.
Fantastic. The next question is, what role does family and community engagement play in public schools?
Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Actually, my dad was a rocket scientist, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that if you could engage the family in education, so it's just not the child and the teacher, it changes everything. And so you have to try different tactics. I mean, I worked a fair bit at Melrose Elementary, which was one of the original so-called failure factories. And we tried various techniques to get parents to come and to communicate with parents. It happened that we ended up doing a whole series of essentially family dinners fairly early. And that got lots of parents to come and engage with the school system. I know that Lakewood Elementary, which is another school in my city council district that started off with an F rating, they used the community peace patch, the community garden, as a way to get parents to engage, because the kids wanted the parents to come and see what they had grown and turned into meals. And so if you can't get the parents to engage, this is an uphill struggle. I do know that we found that at Melrose that texting worked better than letters home. And so you have to be prepared in different communities to try different tactics, because you've got to find ways to engage the parents.
Next question is, if you are elected to serve this term on the board, how do schools, the district, and community look different in 4 years?
Well, I'm really interested in two sort of fundamental areas. One at the really from birth to third grade. I would hope that to be able to use the megaphone of being on the school board to engage from the hospitals to the preschools to kindergarten, using both the Early Learning Coalition, Juvenile Welfare Board, the school system, the hospitals, the libraries, to engage the kids at the earliest possible times, so that we increase the number of children who arrive at kindergarten ready for school. And then within the school system, we have to be prepared to bring whatever resources it takes to catch those kids up. Because it's really not very complicated. I don't care if it's reading or math. If you don't learn the fundamentals, if you can't do third grade math, you're not going to be able to do eighth grade math. And the same logic applies to reading and writing. And so we have to resist the tendency to push kids forward, because that just doesn't work. So I hope that will be fundamentally different. And then at the backside, in the high schools, I would like us to effectively have a plan for each student for what they're going to do after high school and what they're going to do within high school to prepare them for after high school. With the boomers retiring, and which will actually open up millions of jobs, and with the number of the surge in retirees, as an example, healthcare will be an ever greater need. And there are millions of jobs in healthcare that do not require a 4-year degree. There are also millions that do. But there are millions of, as an example, my youngest is an occupational therapist in a hospital. That takes a couple of years of college. Those are the kinds of jobs that we need to provide connections for the students, so they understand that after high school, they're going to get additional training. And to the extent that we can connect those children while they're still in high school with the beginnings of that, we'll have a much better shot of having them continue. So I think if you work at both ends, you could get fundamentally different results in a handful of years.
Okay, then what kind of school board member will you be if elected?
I would say that I am a practical problem solver. In our immediate sense, we're going to have a financial crisis. There is just not going to be enough money to do everything we want to do if we keep doing it the way we're doing it. So, I found when I was both on the city council and on Tampa Bay Water, I would just begin turning over rocks. Just as an illustration, in the $1.5 billion budget is $150 million in health insurance. I found in St. Pete that we were able to set up a clinic for employees that provided both better health insurance and lower costs. And I could give you a dozen different things that I would want to investigate to see whether we could save some money in those areas, because you want to be able to redirect resources where they'll have the impacts, as I was describing earlier, in the early years and the later years. So I would think you would expect that I'd always keep looking for ways to free up money, reduce paperwork, see if we could reduce the layers of bureaucracy so that you can get a higher proportion of the resources into the classrooms.
Okay, so what are the responsibilities of the school board and individual school board members related to public education advocacy?
Well, the great thing about being in public office is you have a megaphone. And so one of the things that's desperately needed is for somebody in the school board to take the lead at the from birth to kindergarten, and I would be prepared to take that role to try to bring the people to the table. The thing about being in public office is you can invite the Juvenile Welfare Board, the Early Learning Coalition, the hospitals, the city to the table to discuss how can we get cooperative resources to make a difference in the pre-K work. And so that is one of the areas where I think as having the megaphone of being in public office, that I could use that megaphone to make a difference. And then at the other end, you've really got school board members need to remind the public that public education is our investment in the future. And it's not okay to say, I paid my taxes up north, these kids are on their own, because you were young or getting your education, or your children were getting the education, the rest of the community was contributing to this. And if we under-resource schools, there is a price to pay for that down the road in poorly educated workforces with families that can't earn a decent living. There's just a whole series of bad things that happen. And with part of living in a community, there's responsibility that goes with that. And so I think one of the needs in public education is the leaders need to serve to remind people that we're in this together.
Okay, and this is the last question. What does constituent outreach and constituent services look like under you as a school board member?
Well, one of the jobs of being on the school board is to fix problems. And I would say that when I was on city council, there's certainly hundreds, perhaps thousands of things that I fixed. And in some respects, you've got to do two things. One is to deal with the immediate issue and try to get that resolved. And then the other, which is actually more important and underappreciated, is that to see, is there a pattern here? Maybe there's something fundamental in the system that has to be changed. And then go proceed to change that. When I was on city council, I think I probably got about 50 policies changed over the years. And oftentimes it would be the constituent call that something wasn't working that led me to investigate that issue to deal with the immediate and the broader issue. So that's how I would attack the constituent service part of the job.
Okay, so you were very cognizant of time. You have about 6 minutes left. If there's anything else that you want to say, that you want to get out there, the floor is yours.
Well, let me address the diversity of skills that a school board needs. There is always a tendency to elect people to the school board who have been teachers. And in fact, virtually all the members of the school board currently have been teachers. And it's obviously a big part of the role. But this is the biggest business in the county. It's $1.5 billion a year. It's a third of $1 billion capital budget a year. It's a $150 million health insurance bill. It's a $30 million electricity bill. It's 14,000 employees, 150 facilities. So because it has so much scale, I think there ought to be somebody at the table who has been used to dealing with those kinds of budgets. The city council, I got on the city council just as the economy collapsed in 2008. So I got a lot of practice at trying to look for ways to save money, because we had 4 years in a row of budget cuts. And so in an uncertain economy with the school system, I think there needs to be somebody at the table who has that skill to try to find where can you cut costs without impacting the classroom. And so I think that is a unique set of skills that I bring to the table. I've been doing that kind of work, in public office for 10 years and in private sector for 35 years. I would not suggest a school board entirely made up of people like me. But I think, that it's in everybody's interest to have somebody at the table who has done a lot more than balance their own checkbook. I think that's probably the unusual skill that I have. The other thing that I would suggest that is a little bit unusual is that when I was on the city council, my city council district, which was majority African American, when I first got on city council, eventually got to like 48%. 3 of the 5 elementary schools were the F schools. And so I have worked up close with helping turn those schools around. And sometimes some of the work is within the school and some of the work is in the surrounding neighborhoods. And so I think that's something that I bring to the table that's helpful. And it's, the stunning thing in the county is that in this school district, in this quarter of the school district, 19 of the elementary schools have at least 40% of their students who are living in poverty. 40% in 19 schools. So we think of it sometimes as just a handful of neighborhoods, but unfortunately it's much broader than we realize. And so we really need to be prepared to step up on this because we don't want just a continuation of generational poverty. And so those are the kinds of things that I bring to the table, the background that I've got, and a sense of urgency. One of the things that sometimes happens in the school board or in any public office is people want the office for the glory. I want the office to make a difference. And, I never went to a meeting in the city, sometimes to my colleagues' irritation, that I didn't want to solve a problem or make a change. And that's what you would get with me. In Washington, they call them show horses and work horses. I'm a workhorse. There's not, I'm not the most articulate. I'm not the prettiest. I'm sure as hell not the youngest. But you won't find anybody that will work harder. The paper used to call me the hardest working man in local government. And I'm happy to say that in Sunday's paper, the Tampa Bay Times is endorsing me as the most effective option for the voters. So if the voters will give me a chance, I promise I will continue that work ethic to solve problems.
Thank you so much. Again, this was Karl Nurse. He's running for Pinellas County School Board District 7. We are completing all of these interviews with both candidates in Hillsborough and Pinellas County and then posting them to our website Monday morning. Once we do that, I will send you a link to the page if you want to put your video out there, but we'll be sending them out to all of our subscribers in the Pinellas area and then promoting them on social media. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.